Good day, Prof. I'm Yuganeswari, and today I'm going to share the Journal Reflection Report presentation. And today's presentation is divided into different parts. The first part, we're going to look at stakeholder theory. And yes, for this presentation and for the Journal Reflection Report, I've actually chosen stakeholder theory to dive deep into it. And the first part, as I say, for this presentation, I'm going to talk about what is stakeholder theory. And then the second part, I'm going to talk about the key findings from all the 10 journals that I've reviewed. And the third part here, I will share insight of the reflections and all the insights that I've gained from all the 10 journals that I've reviewed. And the fourth part here, we will look at the real world application where I'm going to talk about or share information about Volkswagen Dieselgate case, which was a quite familiar case back in 2015, how they actually cheated on emission test. And the last part, we will look into the conclusion and we will conclude the presentation. So without further ado, let's dive deep into our first part, which is stakeholder theory. So here we are going to look at what is stakeholder theory, understanding the selected financial theory. So stakeholder theory. So here stakeholder theory explains that companies perform better when they consider the interests of all the parties, especially the stakeholders who's involved in the company's, who's interested in the company's performance and also could be involved in the company's activities. So these stakeholders include employees, customers, communities, regulators, and even the environment. Even the environment are taken into consideration as one of the stakeholders. So when we see here, stakeholders, a company could perform better when they involve the interests of all these parties who can affect or can be affected by the business decision. So when we say affecting the business decision, it's not only by the shareholders, stakeholders also play biggest part here. And now let us see why these stakeholders matters in finance. So first of all, stakeholders involvement, strong stakeholders involvement and engagement moves focus from short-term profit to long-term trust, transparency, and also accountability of an organization. Second, it supports ethical decision making and also credible financial reporting, especially when there are stronger stakeholders involvement in a company's decision making, especially related to financial. And the third reason why stakeholders are matters in finance is their engagement strengthens the sustainability's performance and also reduce risk linked to poor governance and weak disclosure. And these are the three main reasons why stakeholders matters, especially in financial related decision making. And here in the third slide, we are going to look at key findings from 10 journal articles that I've reviewed. And majority of these articles are peer-reviewed articles. And before we dive into the key findings, continues from the previous slides, the core idea of this stakeholder theory is that strong stakeholder engagement will lead to better information flow, and when we have that better information flow, it will lead to strong governance, and overall a strong governance can lead to more reliable financial choices. So this particular flow and information is supported and proved through all these 10 journal articles that I have reviewed. So let's look into the key findings from all these 10 journal articles. So there are about 4 key findings that I want to discuss today. The first key finding here is stakeholder engagement improves financial outcomes. So some studies show that clear disclosure, sustainability report, as well as ESG practices improve and increase transparency, reduce information gap, as well as boost investors' confidence. And the second key findings that I've actually came across when I did this journal article Corporate governance shape ethical behavior. So some studies support that broad diversity, independence disclosure, strong organizational value, and also capable leadership reduce earning manipulation as well as improve reporting quality. And the third finding that I've came across here is risk increase when firms act symbolically. That means when their regulation and governance is only on paper but not in real practice. So that said that greenwashing and superficial sustainability report damage credibility, raise stock price, crash risk in an organization, and also widen the disclosure performance gap. So all these are consequences of when governance and stakeholder theories are just on the paper but not in real life practice. And next, the fourth finding and the final finding that I've came across from this journal report is that stakeholder focused sustainability accounting builds long-term value. That means involving all these stakeholders like the regulators, like the communities, and then customers, as well as shareholders. Actually, all these will strengthen the reporting, trust and accountability, and also sustainable performance of an organization. So if we see here, involving all these stakeholders in accounting and reporting especially will strengthen the trust, accountability, and also sustainable performance in an organization. So basically these are the four major key findings that I can conclude from these 10 journal articles that I have reviewed. So let's go into the reflection and insight gained from all this journal report in our next slide. And here it is all about what I have learned from the journals, from all the 10 journals that I have reviewed. And first of all, the first gain that I have actually came across is that finance is no longer about profit alone. Let's say if we see about like 20, 30 years ago, major companies, major organization in the market, they will see finance as their major profit generator. But here in this 10 journal studies that I've done from that I've reviewed from 2021 to 2025, it is stated that it is proof that finance is no longer about profit alone. It is tied to ethics, environmental responsibility, and also governance. So a good financial report encompasses all these aspects. The second reflection that I've gained is transparency is meaningful only when supported by real actions, not symbolic reporting, not all this greenwashing and superficial information. So it is only stronger, transparency is stronger and meaningful only when it is supported by real action which involve major stakeholders in the organization. And the third reflection that I have gained is that stakeholder theory works like a living system where connecting decisions, communication, culture, and performance will boost the company's financial reporting as well as the company's overall performance. And the third insight that I've gained from this report is that strong leadership and culture can reduce manipulation, especially profit manipulation. It strengthens reporting accuracy because there are other parties who will be looking at and auditing our report, and also align organizational behavior with stakeholders' expectation. So every stakeholders that involved in our organization, they have their individual expectation. So strong leadership, good culture can strengthen stakeholders and also can improve stakeholders expectation. So basically the critical realization from this particular insights is because it is mainly about, I can say, many studies use developing countries, because if we see many developed countries, they already have strong regulation and governance. So developing countries need broader global research. They need more ethical leaders to lead, and all these that's why all these studies are touching mainly on developing countries. And on top of that, some of the other critical realization is that mandatory reporting does not always lead to real transparency unless firms are monitored and they are continuously motivated. So that means when a company has to mandatorily report their financial standing, that would not always guarantee real transparency. So they must have continuous auditing, monitoring, and also continuous motivation why they should be ethical in their financial reporting. Then they will have this real transparency. And the third critical realization is genuine stakeholders engagement reduces risk and also improve decision making over time for an organization. So with that, let's move on to the next part, which is real world application, where I'm going to share about this Volkswagen's Dieselgate interesting story. Yes, this is real world application where my reflection report touch on Volkswagen's Dieselgate case, where Volkswagen actually involved in an emission scandal back in 2015, where they showed the danger. This particular case actually showed the danger of prioritizing profit and also investors pressure over stakeholders interest. What happened and how it affected Volkswagen. So what exactly Volkswagen did in order to prioritize their profit and also to cope the investors' pressure? Volkswagen installed defeat devices in some of their models to cheat emission tests. And this happened back in 2015, where this scandal or this act actually lead to massive legal, financial, and also reputational damage for Volkswagen. So what exactly or how exactly we can relate stakeholder theory here? So here, stakeholder theory reveals that lack of transparency in an organization would lead to loss of trust, which means this is a bigger issue in an organization. And also poor communication among the stakeholders will lead to high legal and reputational risk, because when there are poor communication among the stakeholders, poor decision making as well. When we have no people to audit or less people to audit and check on our actions, especially related to financial matters, this will lead to high legal and reputational risk with wrong move. And the third, what stakeholder theory reveal is that weak ethical leadership could lead to systematic governance failure. So in Volkswagen's case, it is greater governance failure. But how Volkswagen actually responded to this and how they recover the whole situation is, first of all, they replace leadership and also strengthen governance. So once they replace leadership, they have new regulation, stronger system, and this helped them to strengthen the governance. And the second, how Volkswagen responded, they improve sustainability disclosure. So they start to involve more stakeholders in their decision making, more stakeholders engagement in financial reporting, as well as they engage more actively with regulators and communities. So all these help them to restore their damaged reputation as well as strengthen their standing in the market and also retreat their whole situation. So the takeaway here that we can learn, so basically the takeaway for leaders here as a conclusion is that stakeholders, when stakeholders are focused in their practices, this will lead to ethical culture, open communication, and responsible governance. So when there's ethical culture, open communication, and responsible governance, this will lead to help organization manage risk efficiently, make better decision in their decision making process, and also build long term value. So the organization will have long term value with all their stakeholders and also their shareholders. So basically the core idea of all these stakeholder theory is that, as I mentioned earlier in the second slide, a strong stakeholder engagement will lead to better information flow, and when there's better information flow, that there is stronger governance, and a stronger governance will lead to more reliable financial choices, as well as this will improve the company's financial reporting and also financial and non-financial standing in the market. That is all for my presentation. Thank you.